So for years, the right wing has been on a campaign to demonize the word woke. They've went out of their way to vilify that word when most people that follows after them and believes in their politics doesn't even know what the word means and doesn't even realize where the word originated from. The term woke was originally coined by a musician named Huddy Ledbetter, better known as Leadbelly. And for all you white middle-aged dudes that grew up in the mid-90s that heard Kurt Cobain do the Nirvana Unplugged, and at the end of it he talked about Leadbelly and played Where Did You Sleep Last Night, that's the guy we're talking about. Huddy Ledbetter wrote a song called The Scottsboro Boys, and it was about 9 Alabama men who had been accused of raping 2 white women, and he said to his listeners, best stay woke. And what he meant was you better be aware and you better be awake and you better understand what's going on here. And that's where the term originated. And in my mind, all woke has ever meant is being aware of other people's struggles, being aware of what's going on, being aware of what is racist, being aware of what's homophobic, being aware of what's bigoted, being aware of what's cruel. It's just, that's all it's ever been to me. But they went out of their way to demonize that word and to vilify that word to where that if we tried to hold them accountable, we would look like the bad guys. And there's a whole lot of people on the left too that jumped in on that bandwagon and started demonizing woke. And that's why that here on the channel, I've always gave Bill Maher shit for that very thing. Because while there are people out there on the left that are extreme and have definitely taken things too far at times, there were people out there who were trying to raise awareness on the real issues at hand. And when you go out of your way to vilify and demonize a word like woke, what you do is you unravel all the years of progress that has been made to make people aware and to awaken people about what racism truly is. When you join in with the Ron DeSantis of the world and say, yeah, everything is too woke, that's actually, I've never understood how anyone could even say that with a straight face, because the opposite of woke is asleep. So are you saying that everyone should be in the dark? Are you saying that everyone should be asleep? Are you saying that everyone should be unaware? It makes no sense to me why anyone wouldn't want to be woke. And I don't want to see that word vilified and demonized. And I don't want to see people use that word in a derogatory way to dodge any and all accountability. I have owned up to it here on the channel. I've talked about how I was raised. I've talked about how that I threw my Confederate flag in the garbage. I've talked about how that I was called out for making racist jokes and racist comments, and how that when I was, that I immediately wanted to know and wanted to understand. I wanted to be awake. I didn't want to stay asleep. So this campaign that they've done to demonize that word has done a whole lot of damage. And they've even went so far as to declare war on woke. Okay, so you're declaring war on people who's trying to point out the wrongdoings in this world. You're declaring war on people who is trying to call out hatred and trying to tell people stay awake. What sense does that even make? In what world does it even make sense? It doesn't. But they were being held accountable. They were being called out when they said the quiet parts out loud, and they didn't like that. And they wanted to get back. When they say make America great again, they're not talking about having like a Leave It to Beaver lifestyle with, Ward and June and the Beaver. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about a time when black people kept their mouths shut, when gay people stayed in the closet and women stayed in the kitchen. That's what they're talking about. And if we try to raise awareness to anything, they're going to go out of their way to demonize and vilify us and call us the enemy from within, when all we're simply doing is wanting people to be better and do better. And we're wanting people to come together and help one another. And we're being demonized and vilified for that, and we're being called the enemy from within. And we're the kind of people that Trump would like to turn the American military on, and there's people sitting back going, hey, yeah, they're the enemy, because they called me out over a racist joke I made. I don't understand how someone's mind can work that way. If someone says to me, hey, that song you've been singing for years has racial undertones to it, or hell, that song you wrote had a racial undertone in one of the lyrics and I don't think you realized it. If someone brings that to my attention, I want to know about it. I'm not going to demonize that person. I'm not going to vilify that person. And the fact that people do shows you just how weak and fragile they are, that they're not big enough to accept responsibility and admit when they've got things wrong. And again, has the far left got things wrong? Yes, they have. Have they took things too far? Have they got too extreme with things? Absolutely. But I've always said this, they're not in a position of power. They're not in a position of power to write any bill or to sign anything into law that's going to change or affect your life. So if you think they're loud and obnoxious, turn the volume down. But you know who does have control of the pen now? The radical right. And they're going to go out of their way to try to erase all the hard work that people put in to raise awareness. They're going to go out of their way and work and double down even harder to keep people in the dark about this. And what's going to happen is you're going to have an entire generation who's going to be raised up to think racism ain't no big deal, because when they crack that racist joke or say that racist thing and someone calls them out, oh, they're just woke, don't pay attention to them. When they talk badly about transgender people or be cruel to gay and transgender people, what's going to happen when someone calls them out? That's just woke. Don't pay no attention to that. So you're going to have an entire generation grow up thinking that that's okay. You're going to have an entire generation growing up thinking that that's been normalized and that that's been sane washed. And that's why you can't depend on the kids to save you. That's why you can't say, well, when these kids grow up, they'll say through it, because they're being raised now by the same people who was raised by the people who were spraying black people with water hoses, by the people who was throwing rocks at Martin Luther King. I used to always wonder where those people went. I'd see that picture where the white people are squirting mustard and ketchup on the black people's heads at the counter. I used to wonder, where did those old racist assholes go? Well, you know what they did? They raised kids. And now Charlie Kirk's out there talking to those kids and talking about what a bad guy Martin Luther King is and how that anybody that calls him out on his bullshit is woke. And so when people on the left goes along with that, when the Bill Maher's of the world goes along with that and says woke is a big problem, no, the big problems are still there. And now they're being sane washed, and now they're being normalized by a generation of people who's going to pass that crap on down to their kids, who's going to think it's normal and think it's going to be okay to be that way, because it all got demonized and because no one could even tell you where the word came from. No one could even tell you why the man said, stay woke. So we got a long road ahead of us. So to those of us that were naive enough to think that one day we would put racism in the dustbin of history, we have to realize, nope, we're going to have to work harder than our parents' generation did to do away with it. We're going to have to work harder than the people that came before us to do away with it, because the progress those people made got unraveled by a campaign of fear and paranoia. You had people on the left go along with it and say, yeah, you guys are taking it a bridge too far. And so now we've got a long road ahead of us to put in even more work to do what Leadbelly asked us to do. But I'm always going to keep Leadbelly in the front of my mind. I'm always going to remember what he said, stay woke. And I'm going to remind people that he's the one that said it and why he said it. And I'm going to teach my kids where that word come from. And I'm going to teach them where this is where it originated. This is what it means. And this is where it got distorted. And this is where it got turned into a bad word by a group of people who weren't big enough to own up to who they really were. And they want to same wash and normalize it. Well, we're not going to let them. As long as we have a platform, we're going to be woke whether they like it or not.